Hey guys, welcome back to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. So, on the past episode, I was talking about submittable, and most writers and those who have come into contact with literary magazines, journals, and presses are familiar with submittable, right? But it was more so for per se writers just starting out, or curious about submittable, or perhaps haven't used it much or have thought about it, submitting or trying to submit to places that are leveraging submittable. However, I will say again, right? Submittable is not the only submission management system in existence. No, it is not. So be sure to listen back to my audio episode number 15 if you're curious about that. And of course, I shared some others that came up in list, right, in the past on the Chill Subs episode as well. But in any case, for those of you who are just listening to this episode and dropping by, again, I run Dippy Lit Mag and Dippy Press. So, we were on Submittable, I would say, for a little over 2 years. And yeah, again, I'm not going to say Submittable is a bad submission management system. There are a lot of great things about it. They've helped a lot of magazines and presses, facilitate, a great system for intaking submissions. However, there's always room for improvement, right? Totally. And, I decided this year to leave Submittable. And yeah, I really love Subfolio. And yeah, I think it is a strong contender against Submittable overall. It's packed with a lot of awesome features. And on the back end of Subfolio, or not per se back end, but you can consider Daemon. I think it started as Daemon Management Systems, right? So that still exists. Consider it like almost like an apartment building or city building, right? And Daemon is that building, right? The whole structure, but within there are several different floors, right? And things like that, right? So consider those floors and associate them with like integrations and things like that. But in the very top floor, like the executive suite or whatever you want to call it, I'm trying to do a good analogy for you guys to minimize like technical terms and stuff. So consider Subfolio at the top executive suite, right? And then there's all these other floors and levels, and consider those again as integrations or other functionality on the back end. So it has a lot of different use cases besides just for magazines and presses. Again, submittable, for example, right? I know a lot of places use it for intaking grant applications. Academic institutions use it as well, for taking all kinds of things, right? It's a submission systems are important today, right? Staying organized, it's so important. Yeah, both for writers and the publication. So yeah, I will just share real quick. So I think Subfolio, I can't recall, it may have just like it did launch this year with this name and everything. And it's been around for a little bit. It's still fairly new. Again, Demon has been around longer, but Subfolio, I think it was really kickstarted, I could be wrong, around February of this year. And it's grown a lot since then. I only found out again about it a couple months ago, and I'm so glad I did. We've officially, moved on to Subfolio, and the migration, I must say, it wasn't too bad, honestly. You just have to block out some time to do it, right? We weren't on Submittable for 5, 6, 7, 10 years or anything like that, so I felt comfortable, moving. And we're doing a relaunch of Dippy Lit Mag, so I felt comfortable moving. I know it could probably for other lit magazine journals who have archives with submittable, history of submittable, right? It's a bit tougher for them, I would say, perhaps, but it's totally worth it. I feel absolutely. Subfolio, again, has a lot of capabilities. So let's go in here on into pricing, yeah. So I think I have it up here, and yeah, so you can click on pricing and go in here. I'll just share it with you real quick, and yeah, and then I'll go into the submitter's perspective, like similar how I did the submittable episode, right? So these are the plans available, right? And you can see made for magazines, made for presses. You can see there's different price points here: starter magazine, growth magazine, and scale institutional. So there are several options to choose from. Now again, with submittable, Dippity Lit Mag, for instance, was on a discounted plan, like through the CLMP membership, right? And that is, our bill didn't increase at all. $29 a month. It's the same, and I think that's really great. And whether are using Submittable or not, or whether you're part of the CLMP membership or not, and you're doing the discounted plan for Submittable, right? I would say, a lot of lit mags and journals, they're not, the ones that aren't using, Submittable, right, still have the CLMP membership. The CLMP membership is absolutely worth it too. But you don't necessarily need a CLMP membership to, get this rate at Subfolio. So that's great. And yeah, so I'm just going to show you here. So you can see it has a great, like, this is like, could be considered also like a starter plan too. It's for small, just up and running, new lit magazine journals. I think that's great, up to 100 free submissions a month. And then there's this, unlimited, higher package, very slightly higher, it's not too bad. I really love that, unlimited free submissions, unlimited account seats. So, back when we were on Submittable, right, we were restricted to 6 buckets a month, guys, 6 buckets. So then we'd have to wait, for to open up new buckets. We couldn't open as many as we wanted to. So this way we can have as many buckets as we want open, maybe even all year round. We can really have that flexibility, and I really love that. And volunteer staff, we can have more readers without worrying about hitting our cap of the amount we can have, on our plan. Submittable, had that, a cap on the amount you can have. You have to upgrade, right? There are, usually upgrade fees, and it goes outside of the plan. And oftentimes that's way too costly for lit mags and journals with the budget that they have. And I love the optional tip jars portion, things like that. So, I was showing you on the past episode some confusing submission fee structures that places had. And yeah, that often upset writers in the community, right, on Submittable. And yeah, donations and tip jars, those should always be optional. It shouldn't be required. So it's important that lit mags and journals word that appropriately in their, whether it be through the submission management system or through checkboxes, right? It's important that others, see that that's optional, right? Some places do have fixed fees and things like that. And yeah, at Dippy Lit Mag, again, we discontinued reading fees. We still have fees at Dippity Press. But yeah, anyways, there's a lot of automatic features in here, and I'm primarily quickly sharing this for, found potential editors or those who want to start their own lit mag journal or looking for something that's really great. So yeah, I think the thing that stands out the most to me about Subfolio that I really love is the integrated chat, polls, and conversational assignment functionality. It is reminiscent, so much reminiscent of, like Discord, Slack. A lot of times, we message each other like that, on other platforms too. So I think that's very great. That's great. That's very awesome. I mean, and yeah, so it feels, smooth when you're like communicating with others, right? I felt like in Submittable, when I was on it, it felt kind of it, Submittable has a lot of features, right? It is, no doubt, there's a lot of bells and whistles to it, but I felt like the messaging portion and some of the workflow assignment functions, right, were just, it could have been, designed differently. I'm not a huge fan of, the whole workflow setup and stuff, for team members and volunteer staff on the back end of Submittable. So Subfolio, I feel like, took a lot of that frustration away that I had with that, some of the things, that we were running into, oh, you have to upgrade if you want to do this, you have to upgrade if you want to do that. There are some things you run into, or some features are disabled on the basic plan, limited plan you have. And I really like that we don't have those restrictions with Subfolio. It's a really cool. And yeah, so I also will, show you around here. And yeah, I haven't looked much at this, but there is Ingram Spark integrations too, it looks like. So I know a lot of places, leverage Ingram, right? I've talked about it on the podcast too a little bit. So yeah, so let me go over here and show you this. Let me pull up my page. So I'm going to go over here and show you guys. So if you are, so I'm going to go over here to Subfolio site. I was on Daemon Management Systems, like the umbrella again. Yeah, back end side of it. So I'm going to show you Subfolio now here a little bit. So this is the organizational login. That's for like founding editors, lit mags and journals and presses, right? Their login. And UIs can change, in the next couple of years. So, but this is just, I'm giving a quick walkthrough. And then there's a discover page. So if you go here, it's similar to, the discover opportunities search, that Submittable has that I showed you on the last episode. And yeah, you can find submission calls here. You can see where here's Dippity. Yep, there we are. And then, there's other ones here. And not all of these are onboarded quite yet. Some of these may be, places that are trying it out or test driving it. But I know there's a couple, for sure right now alongside of us, and that's great. As time goes on, as more places are added in here, there'll be more calls, more lit mags, journals, and presses for sure. And that'll, generate traffic here too. We lost, I will say, when we moved off of Submittable, it was to be anticipated, right? A majority of our submissions, came because we were on Submittable, right? Others found us through that Discover Opportunities page. A lot of traffic goes through there, and on this new system, right, we lost all of that traffic, but that's okay. I really feel it's absolutely worth it to move to Subfolio. I was really had issues with some things with Submittable that were always bugging me personally, and I, not to say, Submittable's customer support, when I interact with them, they were always great. Absolutely. They did, help us with things that came up now and then. But feature wise, I feel Subfolio is just way better. I really like it personally. So yeah, you can see here this, and to get to this page, so, when you're on Subfolio, right, let's go back here. So when you're on here, right, and you click discover, I'm already signed into, an account, but going back here, this is what it'll look like. And then you can sign up now, and then it'll take you to this register page. Yeah. And you can see there's you can sign up with Google. Submittable had Facebook, like sign up with Facebook, but I don't really use Facebook, or I don't know how many of you guys still use Facebook. But in any case, I will say, this is for like writer accounts, those who are looking submitter accounts, right? So I know Submittable had for, lit mags, journals, and presses accounts, right, to also have single sign-on, options, which I really liked, where we could toggle easily between our personal account and our, publisher's account, or, for a lit mag, journal, and press. So that's not there, but I think it's great that writers at least have, SSO options. I know a lot of others like that. It's very quick and easy to create your account, right? And yeah, so hopefully, maybe one day that'll be added, SSO options for lit mags and presses too, not just submitters, but I really like that, So yeah, so let me go back here. So yeah, when you're on the Discover page here, right, and let's use, Dippity as an example. We're going to click on View Submission Calls. You can see we have 10 open calls, and yeah, this is what our page looks like. Now, we had a video here, but I haven't updated it yet, our guideline video. So yeah, these are some of the calls we have open. For example, again, some places use, submission management systems to intake volunteer staff apps, right? And you'll notice this is what I really love here. So notice how, some of these categories have no dollar amount here and some do, right? So the ones indicating that there's $0, right, minimum, that means that's indicating there's no initial fee to submit, right? And also there's a dollar sign there because that is also sort of indicative of there also being options, for expedited review, fast track response, and yeah, the ones here that don't have that at all are just, they don't have expedite options, on our podcast, because those take time to review, and the response times vary. But we sometimes have, fast track options for some of our, regular open calls, like, for poetry, short stories, etc. So I like having this minimum amount. And I think that's what also bothered me about Submittable, right? Some places would show up under, no fees, right? As I showed you in the past podcast episode, right? But there are actually some fees in there, right? At the bottom, if they're using, like check boxes or stuff, there's no detection of that, right? That there are any fees or possible ones, right? It doesn't show you a minimum or, anything like that, or a fixed amount. If there's multiple fees in there, it's not indicating that. It's just under the filter, no fees on Submittable, right? So I really love this about, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, look back at that episode. So I really love that this minimum exists, this indicator here. And yeah, so we discontinued fees again. So these are all, there are no reading fees here. They're just sometimes, this indicates we have some expedited fast track options, right? And we may restructure that in the future. Right now, we have 1 to 2 weeks on some categories, and we may, change that. And I'll show you what I mean here. So, let's say I want to submit to a call, right? It's similar to submittable, right? You can expand guidelines. And yeah, so I would say overall, if you're an editor, or you're looking to start a lit mag journal and you're looking for something, very close to submittable, feature wise, Subfolio absolutely is awesome. And yeah, so I'm going to use this as an example. I already, have a sort of went into this. So if you click submit, it's going to take you, off to here, and the guidelines and everything. You can save this. Also on the discover page I showed you earlier, you can also, you know, when you go on the discover page, click in, you can also get notified on calls and stay up to date as a writer yourself. And that's really useful. Also on the discover page, there's a subscribed option here, you know, that you can, be informed of calls, right? And see which one you've subscribed to notifications on, I think. So it ties into that. Yeah. So let me go back here, where it was. So when you click into a submission, let's say, you want to submit and do flash fiction, right? Our guidelines here, you can see my name. I won't scroll down because it has, address in there, but my pen name's in there. And yeah, so after, scroll past the address information, I don't have it filled out here again, but you'll see there's tags. You can add tags here. And I really love this. Writers can say it's a simultaneous sub without typing this is a simultaneous submission. Because in submittable, what a lot of writers I saw them do was that they would put that it's a simultaneous sub in their cover letter. And yeah, so that was really not seen typically, because we do blind concealed reads, right, until the very end. Then are able to, I would see it, right, their cover letter, upon a decision, if it was acceptance and stuff. But yeah, I really love that writers are also able to add tags on the front end. We can make some organizational tags. I think that's really neat and cool. You could also, at the bottom here, if you scroll down, right, you see a lot of the same fields that you used to if you're, have used submittable in the past. Subfolio has that, right? Your cover letter, submission title. That's really great. And yeah, so you can see here, was this previously published? That's because we do allow, previously published short stories. And we also, for Substack, for example, we allow to feature, social media poetry on there too. We used to have a bonus section, for Instagram poetry community in our print issues and social media, mixed with other, features and things like that, and um, published poems, whether it be from our online tank or not. So a mix in that bonus community section. But I think we're going to discontinue that, for our relaunch and stuff. So that's restructured. Anyways, this could also be changed in a sense, right? We could put a tag, we could have a tag available for others to select, stating this is previously published, right? We could do that too. And I may do that absolutely, for some of the calls we have. It's not absolutely, necessary, but I think it's this is good to have, a checkbox option on this one. But that's great, that we have the ability to add, like a simultaneous submission tag, because sometimes it's good to be aware of, if a writer has submitted elsewhere, and to, I know some places prioritize those, that are labeled as simultaneous subs too. Yeah. And you'll see the expedited option here. Um, the Tomorrow People ticket, again, that was named after the CW series. I was a huge fan of the Tomorrow People, and their abilities and stuff. It's just it sort of had, science fiction in it. I was just a huge fan of it. It only lasted a season, guys, on the CW network. I watched a lot of the series on there over the years very closely, but I'm probably going to rename it, I would say, because I'm not sure yet. But, I think that's indicative of that it's like, almost like next day. But, we changed it to 1 to 2 weeks. So that was back when we had a different structure. So I may call it something else, something more, we have things related to like waves and surfing at Dipti, so maybe something water related for sure. you know, but I'll come up with a fun name, and we may add, a 3-day option and here some other options, but see how it's optional, it's not required, right? We're not requiring this at all. And, writers can also, leave tips to us, and things like that. If they'd like, on some of the categories and calls, it's an option, right? And yeah, so Subfolio, on the front end and back end is very simple to use, I'd say. And, my team is still, early into, leveraging Subfolio, for managing submissions and stuff like that. But, again, I'll state, migrating over to it, it really wasn't too bad. It does take, time to do so, obviously, and it's totally worth it. I felt like it. I absolutely feel, as more lit mags and journals, join us, on Subfolio, there'll be more traffic through here, and a lot of writers, poets, and artists, right? Quite a few out there, not a few, but a ton, right, are on Submittable right now. And I think, it has a lot of features that are quite similar in the sense, right? Totally, like the discover page is there, and we can do forms, for writers, right, and artists, and to intake submissions, right? So I think that's great. Whether you be a writer, artist, or a founder of a lit mag journal, having that structure of similarity there, it just makes you feel more comfortable, right? Things you're used to seeing, right? And yeah, so I didn't go into my profile a whole lot and stuff, but you can see here, I won't go into my details, but you can see here, and in your details it just has like your name, at your email address, your bio, right? And yeah, so that's great, and your address is here, and get paid. So I really love this. With Submittable, we couldn't like do this at all. We couldn't easily facilitate this. That's like an upgraded feature through Submittable, right, to award payments to writers and stuff. So Subfolio does use Stripe. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Stripe, but Substack, I'm sure if you've heard of that, they use Stripe, at Substack, right, the publication space and platform, right? And yeah, others use Substack for newsletters too and things like that. So Stripe, it's simple. It's not too bad, honestly. I think that's great that that's there, and everything is very centralized. I love that discover page and everything. It's very neat. Now I don't have a submission in here or anything quite yet. Again, there are very few publications on Subfolio at the moment, but as I mentioned, as time goes on, right, that'll change. But yeah, a lot of the things you're used to seeing, right, similar to Submittable, right? You can see what's accepted, decline, in progress, which your honor needs action. I'm not 100% sure. I know a lot of poets like the color coded options, of their acceptances, declines, and things like that. So I will circle back and see if that is color coded too. I will say, as an editor of a lit mag journal, right, I really like the overall comprehensive features that Subfolio has to offer to the lit mag community and presses as well. And it has several use cases. Again, as I mentioned, it could be applied to other things, for intaking submissions, other organizations and things like that. Yeah, so portfolio, right? And yeah, so there's a lot of really great features. It's still, you could say in its early stages per se, just getting up and going, right? And yeah, I think it'll absolutely evolve even further. Who knows, in the next couple of years, as time goes on, right? And it'd be really cool to see where Subfolio goes for sure. Yeah, so we are definitely not moving back to Submittable, I can tell you that. So I really like Subfolio, and a lot of the features my team uses on the back end to like interactive submissions and stuff has been very clear, and the support is really there for sure. You could tell, again, the founder of Subfolio, Liam Pierce, absolutely cares, and really takes the time to help out, and everything. So, I know Submittable is a larger, right, company, and they've been around for quite some time, right? They have a larger support network, But I think for sure, as this grows and evolves, right, that'll change as well, right? The support for it, and more involved with its growth, absolutely, to help writers and publishers, lit mags and presses, right, who are leveraging it for intaking submissions. So yeah, there are, I'm not going to cover every single feature on Subfolio. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm losing my voice as I'm talking. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I'll get some water or something. But I'm not going to go, since I'm losing my voice, I'm not going to go through, every single feature. Um, I'm not gonna go through every single feature that Subfolio has, but yeah, I don't know if you can hear a chihuahua snoring in the background. I'm so sorry, but my little pal, he snores super loud too. So I apologize if you're hearing snoring in the background of this. That's why I was laughing on top of losing my voice, guys. Oh my gosh, today. Anyways, Subfolio is awesome. I'm not going to go over every single feature it has, for lit mags, journals, and presses, right? And yeah, just know that it's packed with a lot of great features, and I felt absolutely comfortable moving off of Submittable and over to Subfolio. And yeah, it has a lot of the things I was looking for, absolutely. And if you want to see, a breakdown of, just the pros and cons list I made, right? I put that link back in episode 15, the audio episode. And I think I mispronounced some things on that episode. I think I was saying Damon, or is Demon, I think. Yeah. So anyways, I apologize about that. But yeah, totally check it out. It's really cool, really awesome. I know I say everything that I love is awesome, but that's true. So I'm glad Subfolio exists. I think it's going to help a lot of writers and also magazines and presses. Submittable, I know there are other, I just mentioned some things that bugged me about Submittable. And again, not to say it's not a great submission management system, but I think some fellow editors as well, whichever system you're using, there are always things you're like, I wish this could be improved, right? I wish this would change. And I feel like Subfolio has really, taken a lot of, feedback from magazines and presses, and really gone, all out to ensure we have everything we need to, be successful with, our calls, our categories, and yeah, I really love that. So yeah, so if you are an editor, listening to this, or totally, think about, consider Subfolio, right? Consider moving to Subfolio. I would highly recommend it. I feel like it is the best submission management system out there today, and yeah, it is very, very straightforward. Easy to use. I'd say it has a lot of additional features and integrations. Tied back to Daemon, but I think that's just an added bonus, right? And it takes time to learn some things, and that's totally okay. But it is not too bad, honestly. Yeah, I felt like we were in a good place to move off of Submittable, absolutely. It took us, how long did it take us? Maybe a couple, less than a few months. It wasn't too bad, and yeah. So if you're thinking about starting Lit Mag Journal Press, and you came across this, check out Subfolio. You totally. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm sure, Liam would, answer them, as soon as possible and everything. Yeah. And I'm sure as it grows, further and further, it's going to be really, really stellar. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited for more presses and magazines to join us on Subfolio. So I just want to say that. And yeah, I don't know when I'm going to be doing another, episode or anything like that, but we have, some calls happening and some other stuff at the moment at Dippity, and you should check those out too. We're not open technically all year round. Sometimes we close categories around, when I'm working on the print issue construction, or when we have, too much on our plate. But yeah, and sometimes we extend deadlines, like most places, if we don't have hit the cap, for our contest and things like that. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, we try to have fixed deadlines for sure, but sometimes we don't have, submissions in terms of the amount we receive, over the course of the last couple of years has varied. Sometimes we get a bunch of submissions and we're flooded, and sometimes it's not as many as the past month. And, yeah, that happens with, for all lit magazine journals, right? Sometimes they get several hundred submissions and sometimes they get very few. Sometimes there's cricket windows, absolutely. And yeah, considering we moved off of Submittable, right, all that traffic we had isn't there anymore through that Discover Opportunities page, but that'll change. It will one day. So totally check out Subfolio. And if you're a writer, you're interested in submitting to us or other, as more places are added on here, right, or join up with Subfolio, um, it doesn't take, it takes a few seconds, not even a couple minutes to create it, maybe a little bit, but not, it doesn't take 10 minutes to create an account. It's very quick. You could do it, in a couple minutes or a few seconds, just, creating your account. You could do SSO, so yeah, it's very cool. So I'm so happy that we are on Subfolio. Absolutely, it is awesome, and I'll say awesome 3 times for sure. And yeah, so take care, guys. Check it out. I will drop links in the description again. I apologize for losing my voice, and if you heard a chihuahua snoring in the background, I'm so sorry. But yeah, I probably need to take a nap too soon too myself. But yeah. Anyways, I think for the next couple episodes, I'm not gonna do a review on every single submission management system in existence. I talked through other ones and I haven't used all of them, that are out there. So that's why I made that list, and I put limited knowledge and I didn't rate those at all, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind. So I think the next couple of episodes will probably just be spotlighting some, lit magazine journals and, stating things I really like about them, whether I have experience submitting to them myself, things like that. And, just talking about maybe their site design and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of times, there's been a focus on those that do print publications, right? But I feel like there are a lot of really stellar online magazines and journals right out there, and I want to just take some time to talk about some and share, from time to time. I don't know how many I'll do a week or throughout the month, but I'll definitely try to, do that and maybe answer questions, in comments too. If you guys have questions for me or anything, yeah, yeah. So that's all, yeah. In terms of, I think I mentioned this on past episodes again, but with each Lit Mag journal and press again, they have different response times and windows, right? And so just keep that in mind. It's not the same for everywhere. I'll just reiterate that. So yeah, we stayed at Dippy Lit Mag, with, 120 days, but sometimes you hear back faster than that, right? It depends. Chapbooks definitely take us quite some time to go through for sure when we're open, for that. But yeah, um, and yeah, so we are still, I would say fairly small at Dippy Lit Mag and Dippy Press. We're not a gigantic magazine or press or anything like that. But it takes time to grow. And same thing with Subfolio, it's fairly new and it'll take time, for, more publications to, appear here and more submission calls, right? So if you're listening to this, totally check it out, and yeah, you can, as a writer, a poet, artist, right, photographer, you can find some great calls in here. I linked out in episode 2 other places you can find calls as well, not just through, Subfolio's Discover page, not just through, submittables, discover opportunities page, not just through those, right? There are other places and directories, chill subs, right? If you go, to episode, just one more episode before this middle episode, right? Was that 34 or 35? Sorry, I'm off on numbers, but yeah, if you just go back, an episode before this middle one, you'll find that chill subs one. And that's a great place as well to find calls and things like that. And I'm sure they'll add in eventually, um, you know, uh, the submission management, system, Subfolio there, as more places start to use it and join it, right? Totally, that'll happen. And yeah, so for right now, we just chose other, but just know that that other means Subfolio, and it's a great submission management system. So I fully believe that it's going to be something that more and more are going to join. And yeah, I'm so glad we are on it again. So take care, guys. Bye. Yeah. And wait, one PS note, guys. So I just want to say, again, these deadlines, they are subject to change, just because it depends on our submission volume, starting out with Subfolio and stuff like that. But yeah, we hold calls though throughout each year, different windows, and yeah. So we'll see how things go. So far everything's been really smooth and great. Yeah. I will say personally on the back end of Subfolio, what I like to, I'm just sharing, if you're thinking about, starting a lit mag journal, or, leveraging Subfolio for intaking submissions, whether it be a magazine or press. Really love also the moderation functionality on the back end. We didn't really have that with Submittable at all, to mark some, sometimes lit magazine journals get some weird spam submissions and just irrelevant stuff. And, others are just submitting whatever to calls or some inappropriate things, right, that are very glaring. And I mentioned some of those things, on past episodes and stuff. Sometimes there are some really just like accounts trying to, do some really just awful things, right? Flood the queue with all this weird stuff and, not even poetry, even, right? We've had just random screenshots sometimes constantly sent to us, and of in Word documents, like completely irrelevant, of like different web pages from sites. We've also had things where, sometimes there are, journals or lit mags that get, face harassment, plagiarism, right? So I really love the tracking and moderation options on the back end. I feel like, I don't like using the word policing, but I feel like Subfolio, has that great structure, there for like being on top of that stuff, too, which is really nice. Keeping, the environment, for submitting and everything like that, and the publications that are onboarded here, and, very safe, and, secure, and things like that. I think that absolutely is important, right? And yeah, so I must say again, the founder of Subfolio has been really great about answering all the questions and everything that I had. And it was just a really a great experience. I really personally like learning about new platforms and systems and things like that. And it's always interesting, migrations, to new systems are always like nail biter situations, right? Or like, ugh, but it was, honestly, it wasn't too bad for us. So, if you're listening to this, I know some lit magazine journals were wondering like, how are things going? Did you guys move? And yeah, we did. So I really love it. We're still just, we're seeing submissions trickle in and stuff, and we're doing that, right? So yeah, if you're a writer, and I know as writers, right, it's tough sometimes, right? Because there's so many different submission platforms right now, right, that exist, right? Some lit magazine journals take submissions via email, some take it through Submittable, some take it through Oleada, some take it through Moksha, right? Or, there's other ones I mentioned, right, in the list too. Google Forms, even, right? There's so many different, submission management setups that others have. But, I think, one that's common, right, is Submittable, but Subfolio I feel like is going to be a front runner, and absolutely in the space of submission management systems. I think it'll be cool again to really see where it goes, and I think it's going to be really stellar. Yeah, so take care, guys, and yeah, now officially signing off. I just wanted to mention that, so yeah. um yeah, so check it out. By the time, let's say, as let's say 5-12 months, I know I just said bye, I'm sorry, but 5-12 months, get what I'm saying, pass, and as it goes on, right, this will be, a really great space for finding a lot more calls and things like that, absolutely, and presses and magazines. So yeah, it just takes time, yeah, everything, to slowly grow. And totally, I know it will happen over, the next couple of years. It's going to be interesting to see how, a lot of submission management systems, totally evolve further over the years. So I think, again, that's going to be really interesting to see. And yeah, so just a reminder again, Demon Management Systems, that is like the overall umbrella, tied into Subfolio, right? And it was founded by Liam Pierce, all of this. And it's really, I must say, a phenomenal submission management system. So yeah, um, poke around on it, when you get a chance. I will be sure to drop links to everything I mentioned and discussed here. totally listen back to some past episodes on other, alternatives to Submittable, where I mentioned Demon. I think I mispronounced some things there on that episode. I apologize. But yeah, Subfolio is, again, I feel it's going to be a definite front runner, as I said before, in terms of submission management systems. And it offers so much for literary magazines and presses. In plan wise, I think it's really, really great, compared to other places that I've seen. I really love that word unlimited, right? Unlimited submissions on that $29 plan. So that is a really, really awesome. Again, I think it, for a lot of lit magazine journals, the cost is always a factor, and features, right? Those two things, and efficient support. So I feel like over time, as this grows, support can be added, obviously, right? Behind this, and as more join and are on board with Subfolio, it'll continue to grow and evolve, as I mentioned just earlier. So yeah, I could go on and on about some of the things about Subfolio, but we're still fairly early, using it ourselves. We've only been on it for launch wise less than a month. So maybe I'll do a follow up episode for you guys or something, later on. But for right now, I just wanted again to show you the submitter's perspective, what it looks like, and also discuss some things, for even editors, or those thinking about starting a lit mag or journal, or if someone's unhappy with their current submission management system, yeah, head over to Subfolio, check it out, and yeah, um, there are a lot of options available to us today, but I feel that this one is my fave thus far. So yeah, we're gonna stick with it, and yeah, take care, guys, and have awesome days ahead. Yeah.